Fallout New Vegas is a far darker game than Fallout 4. Both games have their moments of horror, but oftentimes Fallout 4 will simply allude to a great tragedy. But Fallout New Vegas shows it. Fallout New Vegas exposes the ugliness of a lawless post-apocalyptic world. It lifts the scab off of the wound and forces you to see evil for what it is. The story we're going to talk about today is the story of kidnapping, slavery, rape, sexual abuse, and violence. These are not happy stories. Now, this may make some people really uncomfortable. Sexual abuse is a common thing in our world as well, and some people are going to have some very strong emotions and opinions on the topic. But at the same time, I think it's really important to hear stories like these, even if it's unpleasant, even if it makes us uncomfortable. Because some people like to romanticize evil, but it's really hard to romanticize evil when you see the effects that evil has on people. Today's story starts at the Aerotech Office Park. This is a refugee camp that the NCR, the New California Republic, has set up for people who are homeless, wounded, starving, and unable to care for themselves. We meet with a man named Captain Parker who has a problem and needs your help.
Well, I am a little short-staffed. Maybe you could give me a hand. Some people have gone missing from the camp lately. I haven't seen any signs of violence or heard about any feuds. They just up and vanished. They never seem to have much in common. That's why I didn't notice it sooner. Young folks, old folks, men, women, all disappearing. I remember a family with a little blonde girl. She never talked much, but she always carried this little stuffed teddy bear. Seemed to recall a lot of them did business with those scavengers over on the west side, Dermot and St. James.
Who's going to miss a starving, homeless family? Something has happened to these people and we need to get to the bottom of it. This family was last seen doing business with some scavengers named Dermot and St. James on the west side of New Vegas. The west side of New Vegas is a horrible slum filled with houses of prostitution and crime. One of these houses of prostitution is called the Casa Madrid. Outside we find the owner, Marco.
Welcome to Casa Madrid, cheapest, cleanest whores in all New Vegas. If you want to know the rates for poon, talk to the whores.
He has 3 prostitutes that work here, but everyone's favorite is Sweetie.
Damn fine woman, but damn expensive too. Just ask St. James. He spends near every cap he gets on Sweetie Sweets.
St. James. Now we remember that name. That's the name of one of the scavengers that the missing family often did business with. We can find St. James and his business partner Dermot hanging out in an alleyway right next to the Casa Madrid.
Me and my partner St. James work salvage around West Side, that's all.
Me and Dermot work salvage around New Vegas. Dermot knows how to work salvage better than any man I ever met. Doesn't go asking questions all day neither.
Well, these fellows have their story straight. They both say that they work salvage. We can use the information Marco gave us about how St. James spends his money on prostitutes to see if we can make him a little uncomfortable and get more information.
That's private. I don't go asking about how you like to get laid, and I don't want to know. Enough of that. Fuck off.
Well, that didn't seem to work. Instead, we can ask him directly about the missing family.
I don't know a thing about no missing refugees from that Aerotech camp. Go cry to somebody else.
Well, he just made a mistake because in our question, we didn't actually mention the Aerotech camp.
Yeah, well, I must have heard rumors, and, fuck you. You got nothing on me and Dermot.
Clearly, Dermot and St. James know something about what happened to the missing family, but they're not going to give up the information. However, we learned from Marco that St. James frequents a prostitute here named Sweetie. We'll go inside the Casa Madrid and see if we can get more information from Sweetie. Upon entering, we find a woman named Pretty Sarah. She's actually the pimp of the hotel.
You can just talk to the whores, you know. You and me, we don't need to talk unless there's trouble. I look after the only reasons anyone would want to spend any time here. I'm a pimp. Most of my body is scarred all over, like a ghoul. Nobody around who'd want to screw that. No, I just run things.
So she's not a prostitute herself because she has burn scars all over her body, and she refuses to talk about how she got the scars.
We don't talk about that. Next topic.
We can actually learn the answer by going back outside to talk to Marco. This guy has a loose tongue. He doesn't keep secrets very well.
Ain't so pretty, is she? Not since she had a run-in with those fiends over near McCarran. This fiend named Cook, on account of the flamethrower he wears, he had his way with Sarah. Every way it can be done. Then he starts frying her up for kicks. Guess it was how he signed his work.
we know fully well the horrors of the fiends. In our last video, we cleared Vault 3, ruled by a fiend boss named Motor Runner. The fiends are some of the most brutal, drug-crazed raiders in all of the Mojave Wastes. And it sounds like this Cook may be the worst of the lot. He raped Sarah and then tried to cook her with a flamethrower. That's how she got scars all over her body. But before we get too distracted, let's go upstairs and talk to Sweetie. We still need to find out if she knows anything about St. James and what he might know about the refugees.
Sure do. St. James is my #1 customer. He's a prospector who pays Marco to stay here at the Casa week to week. I don't know why his friend Dermot chose to stay here. He's never been with me or nobody else. But St. James likes having me close at hand. A client's got a right to privacy, so it'll cost 200 caps for me to tell you all about it.
If you have high barter, you can talk her down, but I don't, so 200 caps it is.
St. James has problems, that's for sure. Never wants me to say a thing or for me to move around either. Lately, he brings a teddy bear with him and props it on the bed like it's watching us. It's creepy as hell. Not the worst I ever been with, but more a pervert than most.
A teddy bear. Captain Parker told us that the little blonde girl with the family had a teddy bear. What is St. James doing with this teddy bear, and why does it seem to have such significance for him that he would put it on a shelf as if it was watching them while he's using the services of a prostitute? Our next hope is that Sweetie may have a key to St. James's room.
I do have his spare key, but I'm not sure if he'd like it if I let you in there. St. James can be a little crazy sometimes.
And of course, as always, we have to pay for her cooperation.
We can come to a deal. My price is firm, though. St. James is a good customer, and it better be worth it if I'm going to lose him. And here's your key.
Heading downstairs, we can use the key to open the door to St. James's room. Inside on his bed is the teddy bear. We can take this outside to St. James and confront him.
What are you doing stealing my stuff? That ain't even mine. I mean, it's mine, but it's private. Give it back. Hell, don't give it back. I don't care. Just found it when we was working salvage and thought I'd save it to give to some kid if one came by.
The guy can't get his story right. This has got to be the same teddy bear that belonged to the little girl. We can bring it back to Captain Parker and turn it in.
I think that's her teddy bear. It's suspicious, but it doesn't tell us what happened to the refugees. We know there's a connection with the refugees, but we need to know where they could be found. There could be more evidence in Dermot's room.
But we need to get more evidence, and the evidence may be with Dermot. Back to the Casa Madrid, we find Dermot's door open, and on a table in his room is Dermot's ledger. The contents of the ledger are horrifying. We learn that St. James and Dermot are slavers. They kidnap refugees and sell them as slaves to fiends. Dermot and St. James sold a teenaged girl to Motor Runner for 500 caps. This is the same Motor Runner whom we killed in Vault 3. The notes here are truly disgusting. Motor Runner didn't give any caps for the teenage girl's father, and Dermot has to make a note to keep St. James off of the girls. St. James molests these girls before handing them over to the raiders, and the raiders don't want tainted goods. We see another delivery to Motor Runner. He paid 250 caps for an adult woman, 25 caps for an old woman and an old man, and 0 caps for a baby. This was a woman, her infant child, and her parents. Since Motor Runner didn't pay any caps for the parents, he leaves a note for himself to just murder elderly people instead of bothering to hand them over to the fiends, since they don't pay anyway. We then learn that they sold a teenage girl for 400 caps to a fiend named Nephi, and a teenage boy for 150 caps. They also sold a little girl aged 7 for 50 caps. These were all siblings, part of the same family. Dermot and St. James learned from their previous transactions and murdered the kids' parents before handing the kids over to the raiders. He tried to get more caps for the young one, saying, well, she will grow up eventually, but the raiders wouldn't go for it. And most disgusting of all, we learned that the only way Dermot could keep St. James off of the girls was by giving him the little blonde girl's teddy bear. He ends by saying, quote, he is a sick one, but I guess the work calls for it. The final entry is a transaction to a raider named Cook. Dermot and St. James sold an adult woman for 200 caps, 2 teenage girls, each for 400 caps, each one worth twice the amount as the adult woman, and a teenage boy who sold for 100 caps. After buying the children, Cook tied the girls up, took out his flamethrower, and forced them to watch him incinerate their brother alive. This ledger is all the evidence we need. The missing family that Captain Parker sent you to go save is dead. These slavers kidnapped the refugees, killed the parents, and then sold the kids to the fiend raiders. Now, we already learned from Marco that Pretty Sarah has a personal history with Cook. Cook is the man who raped her and burned her. If we show the ledger to her, she has quite a response.
I'll take a look, but you better have a good reason for asking me to violate his privacy. What? Those bastards. Selling folks off to the fiends? Selling children to Cook? I've seen enough. They're done for, both of them.
And then we can take the evidence to St. James himself.
You got his book? Dermot, this bitch got your book. She got your book.
These slavers don't really have anything terribly interesting. St. James carries a power fist, and Dermot carries a rare police hat and Robco jumpsuit. The inhabitants of the Casa Madre respond in a variety of ways. Marco is upset that you killed his good business.
Thanks a lot. I'm out Dermot and St. James's rent, and they paid regular. And once they get to stinking, I'll have to clean up the mess too.
Pretty Sarah, naturally, believes that it was justice well deserved.
It's good you told me about Dermot and St. James. It was killing that needed doing. You think you see the worst of what people can do to each other, and then there's always something else to top it.
And Sweetie is sad that she lost her best customer.
Dermot being dead I don't care about, but St. James was regular income. Maybe you could throw some business my way.
You can then take the teddy bear and the ledger back to Captain Parker to complete the quest.
Oh, sick bastards. Can't say I'll shed any tears for them. Here, you've earned this.
These fiends are pure evil. I wanted to kill all of the fiends mentioned in this story, Nephi and Cook. Now, we've already killed Motor Runner. We killed him in my video on Vault 3, which you can watch here, but we need to find out where this Nephi and Cook are hiding. To do so, we go all the way to Camp McLaren. There we find a man in a green beret named Major Daughtry.
I've got 3 fiends I want dead, and I don't give a goddamn how it gets done. First one calls herself Violet. God knows why. The name is the prettiest thing about her. Spends most of her time with a pack of vicious dogs. Then there's Driver Nephi. He's fast and he's brutal. Killed about a dozen of my men with a goddamn driver iron. Hence his name. And finally, Cook. Rapist, pyromaniac, and damn good chef if you believe the fiends we've captured. Probably the craziest of the lot. I'm not gonna feed you any bullshit. These aren't your common Vegas trash. They've all killed good NCR men, and plenty of mercs too. You go after them. Any of them. You're in for a hell of a fight. So, which one is it gonna be?
This man thinks the same way we do. He wants those fiends dead, we want those fiends dead. Let's start with Violet. We don't know who she is, but Major Daughtry needs her head.
Violet it is. Wish I could give you more advice on how to bring her down, but we know less about her than the other 2. Just watch out for the dogs. She raises them herself. Might as well be their mother and never leave her side. One more thing. If you want the full reward, you need to bring me a recognizable head. My superiors need proof they're gone. That means no headshots, no decapitations till after they're dead, and no damage to the face. If you want to be safe, aim for the chest. You bring me a head that looks like a rotten tomato, people will be doubting, and I won't be authorized to pay the entire bounty. Good luck to you, and don't get careless.
We find her camp south of the Poseidon Energy gas station, just west of Vault 3. She's created a rickety shack on top of a bunch of interconnected trailers, which serve as the beds for her dogs. If she gets her dogs on you, you are mincemeat. They can tear you to pieces. So the best strategy, in my opinion, is to snipe her from afar. I accidentally shot her in the face, which mangled up her head, so I won't get the full reward for completing this quest. Now, Violet does have a named dog pet named Violetta, and when you loot Violetta's corpse, you can loot Violetta's brain. Be sure to save this brain for later. We may need it for a future quest. Most disturbingly, every single dog bowl is filled with human meat. There's human meat on the floor, human meat on the platforms above the trailers, human meat inside the trailers. Violet was killing people and feeding her dogs human meat. Honestly, I wouldn't expect anything less from a fiend. Sure enough, on her corpse, we loot Violet's mangled head, so we won't get the full reward for this one. Now that we have the head, we're gonna head back to Major Daughtry.
Well, that could be Violet, or it could be someone else entirely. I'll take your word for it, but I can't give you a full reward.
Next up is Nephi, and Major Daughtry issues you this warning.
You've got some guts, I'll give you that. Nephi is one tough son of a bitch. You let him get close, and he'll take your head off. My advice is this. Talk to Lieutenant Gorobets. He's in charge of Alpha Team, 1st Recon, snipers. If you're lucky, you can lure Nephi into the open and the sharpshooters can bring him down. You bring me the head, you'll still get the bounty. It's a better bet than trying to take Nephi one-on-one, but it's your call.
Now, if you want, you can engage the services of Lieutenant Gorobets to help you take down Nephi.
You've got it. Listen, my team has a debt to settle with Nephi. We've seen too many of our boys get brained by that golf club of his. My team will take up positions around the old rock crushing plant. They'll wait until they see Nephi, and then they'll start shooting. At that point, just keep your head down and stay out of range of his golf club. We'll take care of the rest.
We find Nephi and his raider thugs inside a crumbling hotel just south of Vault 3, really close to the door. Nephi will charge you and swing at you with his golf club. It's important to have a companion with you to serve as a lure, because unless you're highly armored, you won't survive very many golf swings. Once dead, we can loot his head.
You killed another one. Let me have a look at the head. Well. Driver Nephi. Nothing to say, you son of a bitch? No tips on my golf swing? Lost a lot of good men to this psychopath. Morale's gonna be better now that he's gone. Here's the bounty I promised.
And with that, we bring justice upon the man who bought the little blonde girl for 50 caps. That leaves only one fiend remaining, the very man we came here for, Cook.
One thing I should tell you about Cook. Piece of shit is pure animal. He raped one of my snipers, and that makes this personal. Also, he's got a flamethrower, and he's damn good with it. From what I hear, he either rapes or burns every living thing he gets his hands on.
He raped one of their snipers? This man is a serial rapist. We can go deeper into the camp to try and figure out what happened. Here we find the commanding officer of the snipers who live here, Lieutenant Gorobets.
Cook, one of the fiends, ambushed her and 10 of spades. They both managed to escape, but not before Cook raped her. Betsy shrugged it off like it was nothing, but her behavior keeps getting worse. Always making passes at every woman who wanders by. It's inappropriate for anyone at 1st Recon to behave that way. I could discipline her, but I'd rather she get medical help.
Well, we can offer to talk to Corporal Betsy and try to help.
I'd appreciate it. As her CO, I could order her to get help, but I'd have her agree with the idea.
Sure enough, just like Gorobets said, Corporal Betsy is dealing with a lot of anger, and her comments are a bit inappropriate.
But I don't feel bad about shooting Legion boys. Fiends, on the other hand, sometimes I get pangs of conscience. Not often, but sometimes. Some cute little junkie bitch, so fucked up she doesn't even know that she's the bad guy. And I've got a headshot her. Makes me think. Might just be sex, though. I see some cute little number and I'd rather get in her pants. So maybe I'm a stone-cold bitch after all. Thing is, there's a lot of assholes in the army. I keep hoping they'll pair me up with some hot blonde like you see on those old pinups. Shit, I don't even care if she can shoot straight. Can't have everything.
Now, from everything I've read, survivors of rape can suffer from a form of post-traumatic stress disorder called rape trauma syndrome, or RTS. One of the coping mechanisms of RTS is extreme anger, as is understandable, and a major lifestyle change that is possible with RTS is to become hypersexualized and overly promiscuous following the attack. Victims who become hypersexualized will use this as a way to try and reassert control over their sexuality. By being raped, their power over their bodies was stripped from them. Those suffering from RTS can feel that the only way to get that control back is to be overly promiscuous, is to make rather rash sexual decisions, and possibly some unwanted advances. I think it's clear that Corporal Betty is suffering from RTS. And so does her commanding officer. To his credit, he could simply discipline her for her inappropriate behavior, but he cares about her. She's a fellow soldier. He doesn't want to see her disciplined, not after what's happened to her. We can learn more about the attack by talking with Corporal Betty's partner, Ten of Spades.
It was my fault. See, I was knocked out when it happened. That big guy sneaked up on us. I let Betsy down. She's my goddamn partner. See, we work in pairs. We spot for each other, watch each other's backs. Nobody wanted to work with me. They said I was too green, but Betsy volunteered. Shit, you don't even know how big a deal that is. She trusts her life to the newbie, and I sit here and let her get raped by that piece of shit. I should have woken up. I shouldn't have gotten knocked out in the first place. That shit was my fault. I don't want to talk about it anymore, all right?
Poor Ten of Spades, he feels like it was his fault. He owed her so much for taking him under her wing, and he feels like he really let her down. Now, if you try to put your nose into Betty's business, she doesn't appreciate it.
The lieutenant's been talking to you, hasn't he? Look, I don't need a head doctor. I'm first recon, damn it. You don't see the others crying about every little bruise and scrape, do you? This was none of their business. Or yours. You've got no right to talk to people behind my back about this.
But every member of her squad loves her and cares for her and wants to see her get better, and they each have excellent advice to give her. If you talk to Ten of Spades, he talks about a doctor who helped him with his stuttering problem.
Oh, but because of what that fuck Cook did? Well, it's not the same thing, but Doc Kusanagi helped me with my stuttering. The doc has a clinic north of here. Can't miss it. You should talk to Bitterroot, too. He's been to see the doc, too.
He got better? If he says so. Anyway, Ten of Spades is a good kid. Maybe I ought to listen to him for once.
If you talk to Sergeant Bitterroot, he talks about the same doctor who helped him through his past. We'll be covering this in another video, but Sergeant Bitterroot used to be a great con. He's a survivor of the Bitter Springs massacre. He watched his family die right before his eyes. He suffered from PTSD as well, so a recommendation from him comes from real experience.
Ten of Spades really ought to keep his mouth shut, but he's right. There are a lot of things in my past I just couldn't leave behind. It helped. A little. Well, more than a little. Betsy ought to pay a visit to Usanagi since it can't hurt none.
Bitterroot actually said that? I can't see him talking about his problems to anybody, much less admitting that someone else actually helped him.
And finally, we get some hard but helpful advice from Corporal Sterling.
It's a pride thing with her and totally unnecessary. I mean, look at me. I was Ranger Sterling until the Legion got through with me. I was bitter, but if I kept my mouth shut, the NCR would have discharged me and sent me home. Instead, I asked if there was still a place for me. Had to prove I could still handle a gun alongside all the recruits. Look at me now. First recon and still going strong. You tell Betsy that.
Corporal Sterling is right about being a pride issue, but it's also something that's kind of outside of her control. I don't think Betty should be shamed for responding the way that she is. Oftentimes we won't know how we'll respond to traumatic situations like these until they actually happen. Thankfully, I think what Corporal Sterling said came from a place of love. He respects and admires Betty. He just wants to see her get better.
I always wondered about that. First Recon is elite, but the Rangers... I can't imagine what it'd be like to lose that kind of status. All right, consider me convinced. I'll go see Usanagi. You can tell the lieutenant that I caved, and thanks.
Now that Betty's agreed to seek medical help, we can tell the good news to Gorobets.
Yes, the others in the squad said you'd come to them about her. It's a start, but let's hope she sticks with her treatment as long as it's necessary. I'm afraid she'll ditch Usanagi early if she feels it's taking too long. She won't want to look bad in the eyes of the rest of First Recon. Do me a favor and let Usanagi know Corporal Betsy is coming. I'd like to make sure the medical clinic has time for her.
To make sure that Betty follows through with it, we can travel north to the New Vegas Medical Clinic to talk with Dr. Usangi.
Mental trauma can be just as debilitating as physical injuries. Fortunately, I'm well qualified in such treatment. I'll make time in my schedule.
And with that, we complete Betsy's side quest, I Don't Hurt Anymore. Sometime later, if we go back to talk with Betsy, we see that she's doing a lot better.
I've been seeing Usanagi and things are better. I'm not so angry all the time, you know? And, I'm not trying to jump every woman in camp. Well, not all the time, anyway.
But we have some unfinished business. We had to get Betsy the help she needed, but now we need to pay a visit to Cook. We find him and his raider gang hiding out in a ruin just south of the Sunset Sarsaparilla headquarters. Cook's flamethrower is devastating. If you get too close, you can be burned to a crisp in no time. Thankfully, if you bring a companion, he tends to focus on the companion, which allowed me to get in quite a few pistol shots at point-blank range. It was then just a matter of cleaning up the riffraff. Cook carries an incinerator, and on his body we find the unique Fiend Arclight helmet, which is actually really horrible as a helmet, but it does have a unique model. I didn't do a very good job of keeping this head pristine, so we're going to be looting Cook's mangled head. While you're here, be sure to loot Cook's Fiend Stew recipe, which is on a shelf behind a broken wall. You can then loot a bunch of vegetables and meat, which are all ingredients for the stew. This opens up the stew as a new recipe that you can cook at any campfire or hot plate. With Cook's head in your bag, we can go back to Camp McLaren and proudly present it to Major Daughtry.
Let me see the scumbag's head. Yeah, that's Cook. Ugh, did he always smell like this, even before he was dead? And the fiends let this guy touch their food? Well, this is payback for at least one of my troopers. She'll be glad to know he's dead. Here's your caps. I guess we can send First Recon down to Camp Forlorn Hope. They need all the help they can get there. You've been one hell of a stroke of good luck, you know that. Those 3 scumbags probably killed 20 NCR troopers, and you bring them down alone. Wish I had a few grunts as good as you. Damn good working with you. Perimeter's been quiet since you left. The fiends are running scared. I doubt they'll give us any more trouble. Not for a long while.
The rape survivors each have their own unique dialogue. We can tell the good news to Corporal Betsy.
You killed him? Well, shit. Here I'd dreamed up this whole elaborate revenge fantasy. Didn't really think I'd do it, but as long as the tubby bastard was actually alive, I could pretend like I would. Here, I owe you. Take it and get out of here, before I indulge my inner bitch and spoil the moment.
Tough as nails as always, at least she's thankful. Hopefully, it will help her heal. We can then go to Westside and tell Pretty Sarah that we killed her rapist.
You did? Well, that's one hell of a service to humanity then. I guess I always thought maybe I'd be the one to do it. But I just never got my nerve up. Maybe I'll sleep good tonight. Here, take this. It's how I say thanks.
And with that, we put an end to the slavers, the murderers, the rapists, and the torturers who kidnapped vulnerable families, murdered starving parents and the elderly, and then sold their children into lives of horrible slavery. This was a hard video to make, ladies and gentlemen. My skin was crawling at every turn. But despite how horrible this made me feel, as I said at the beginning of the video, I think stories like these are important. Because sometimes it's tempting to be like all of those edgy teenagers out there and say horrifying things about real tyrants from history, or to treat evil like it's just another lifestyle choice. I'll never forget watching Pirates of the Caribbean, and at one point Keira Knightley's character looks at her father with with pride in her eyes and says, "I'm a pirate." And I just sat there cringing in the theater thinking, pirates were nothing to be proud of. It's not a lifestyle choice that's admirable. They were murderers and thieves and rapists, just like these fiends. But now when Halloween rolls around, we dress up our kids like pirates and we go and say, "Arr!" We've got our yearly Talk Like a Pirate Day, and we make movies about them glorifying their past deeds. And that's fine so long as we understand and teach our kids that the piracy of the real world was truly evil. There are things like this story we just watched that go on in places on this very earth all the time. And I think sometimes we don't realize just how awful they are until we're forced to view the issue from all sides like we are in this story. We talk with rape victims, we learn about murdered children, teenagers sold likely into a lifetime of sex slavery. Now, New Vegas being a role-playing game, we can play these games any way we want. And each time a person plays this game, he or she plays it in a completely new way. That's the beauty of Fallout New Vegas. But for me, stories like this give me more energy to try and bring justice to the Mojave Wasteland. In a world where there is no system of justice, at least in this world, my character can try to be. That may be why I like the Minutemen so much in Fallout 4. The Minutemen and the NCR are both fighting the good fight. My Soul Survivor and my Courier are trying to do likewise. But how about your Soul Survivor and your Courier? Ladies and gentlemen, I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Did you stumble upon this side quest when you played Fallout New Vegas? Did you know that New Vegas got this dark? Or do you think that I'm blowing things out of proportion, that this is just a normal story? It's nothing to get squeamish about? Let me know in the comments section below. I love to read your comments and I use them as inspiration for my future videos. Do you like it when I dabble into Fallout New Vegas lore? Be sure to let me know. And did you know that I have a new t-shirt shop? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You can now buy some Oxhorn themed t-shirts or even some Fallout 4 themed t-shirts with your favorite faction logos and quotes. If you're interested, you can find a link to my Teespring t-shirt shop in the description below. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Patreon subscribers gain access to a private channel on my Discord server, as well as a bunch of other cool Oxhorn perks. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so glad you're watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.